Have you ever wondered how the translation API works, or have you ever wanted to just plug and play with the translation API without worrying that much about the underneath infrastructure that you have to connect? Let's jump into building a translation API with a TreeScale using a standard LLM application. Let's log into our TreeScale account and start building an app for the translation. I'm going to use GitHub to log in. Now that I have access to TreeScale apps, let's create a new application called Translate. We have this translation application, and TreeScale automatically generated an endpoint for me, which I'm gonna change to Translate. And I'm gonna remove this standard default prompt that TreeScale gave to me. So now we have to define a prompt that essentially translates from one language to another and accept all of the variables as a standard API input for our REST endpoint. I have prepared this prompt, which essentially we gonna define step by step. So this essentially tells that to large language model to translate the text below, which is wrapped into a text variable, and I'm gonna use the phrasing of saying translate this text below from this language as a variable and to that language as a variable. And the important part here is that to give a correcting message saying that this large language model have to respond with the translated text only without any external information. And if for some reason, if given language variable is not an actual language that this large language model knows, it will just respond with a message saying it is not possible to translate from this language to a given language, all that with a standardized way of responding. So I'm gonna use the GPT-4 32,000 token based model because we might want to input large text in these sorts of applications. So I'm going to publish this endpoint, and after having endpoint published, now we can go to our debugger to test this out. I'm going to use the text that we have in our documentation. I'm just simply going to copy this and pass into the text input here as the text variable. And we have also language, which is a from language, and this is English. I'm gonna translate to Spanish and hit the execute button. So as you can see, the request is going on. It sends essentially those variables wrapped into the prompt that we are giving, and TreeScale automatically generates that prompt with the variable validation, and see we actually got back a translated text here. Another cool thing here is to try to see if we actually have proper rules in place. So I'm gonna name the two language some random things. Of course, this is not a language, and I want to see if what happens when I'm sending the wrong variable name or typing here, how the language model will actually respond. And see, like funny enough, the language model actually tried to translate those numbers. Seems it understand that as a language. So I'm gonna type some very weird characters here to see if language model actually responds back with our defined language response. See, it responded that it is not possible to translate given text from English to these random keys that it doesn't understand as a language itself. And of course, if we want to use this, let's say from our terminal or from Node.js or even from our front-end JavaScript code, we can just simply copy paste this code and execute this API as a separate application. So that is probably the simplest way to create a translation API endpoint with the modern AI models without even worrying about any infrastructure or even hosting costs. So don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and stay tuned.